inspiration was something that like had left me, and it was so profound, that loss of inspiration, that for years, like literally years, I couldn't remember the word inspiration because it had left me completely. And it's not that I wasn't inspired. Of course, you can't not be inspired by things. Like I was, but as far as creatively and having that drive, having that motivation, having that like real spark, that just didn't really exist in me anymore. You know, if it did, it was very fleeting. It would be there for like a second. But like my flame, my pilot light was still lit, but the burner was not on at all. But when the right thing is there, then the motivation will persist.
Welcome to the Gen X Shift podcast, a show for Gen Xers who are navigating some pretty tough transitions and aren't sure how to move forward. I'm your host, Michelle Walter, proud Gen Xer, former lawyer turned entrepreneur, huge Jason Momoa fan, and margarita snob. And I've navigated a lot of transitions in my life, from losing my mom suddenly to a heart attack to starting my own business. But I often did it all on my own because I was too stubborn to ask for help. Now I'm on a mission to give actionable strategies to other Gen Xers so that they can find the confidence, courage, and clarity they need to make a shift. So let's rock and roll. Hey Gen Xers, welcome back to the podcast. This week's episode is extra. It is extra inspiring, extra thought-provoking, extra funny, extra explicit, by the way. And it's because I'm sitting down with the amazing, inspiring, wise, hilarious Ellen Latzen. And if you don't know the name, I know you know the phrase shittin bricks, because Ellen was Ruby Sue on Christmas Vacation. I reached out to her because I just knew that this woman had a story to share that is going to inspire my audience. I don't want to take too much time in the intro because this conversation covers a lot of ground, everything from childhood acting into now coming back to acting as an adult, to politics and spirituality and just everything in between. So buckle up for this one because it is a fantastic ride, and I'll catch you on the other side. Hey, Ellen, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, I always like to tell my guests or my listeners how I know our guest. And I have to full on admit, over the holidays, was watching Christmas Vacation like I usually do. And I don't know if other people do this, but especially when I watch older movies or television shows, I end up going down a rabbit hole, Googling, where's so-and-so now? Mm-hmm. And so, of course, I'm Googling, where's Ruby Sue now? And I come across your Instagram page and I start scrolling through and I'm like, this woman has a story. Like I could just tell from your Instagram post that you had some shit to say. And so I thought, I'm just going to message her. And there may have been some liquid courage involved with that. So I send you this like long message on Instagram Messenger. I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to message her, tell her why I'm messaging her. Tell her I have this like intuition that I think she would be amazing to talk to and hear your story. And you responded pretty quickly and you were just so gracious. And long story short, we ended up messaging back and forth a little bit and then setting up a pre-call for the podcast and just hit it off. And
oh yeah, deeply connected, I would say.
Yeah, lost soul sisters.
Yeah, soul sisters was exactly what I was going to say.
We were texting the other day and I mentioned The Artist's Way to you, which shout out to Julie Cameron in The Artist's Way. I think everybody should read that book. And so you ordered it. So
it just came today.
Did it? Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna sit down. If we don't get off too late, then I'm gonna sit down and start it.
Okay. Well, so we're gonna do our little book club because I want to read it again. And when I was getting ready for the podcast tonight, I had an idea for what we can call our book club.
Oh, which is what?
Shittin books.
Bravo.
If that's okay with you, I would.
Yeah, I'm totally. It's trademark registered.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, if they have been in a coma since the 80s, you are Ruby Sue among many roles. I think most famously known for Ruby Sue on Christmas Vacation. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, but that's really like, I may have Instagram stalked you because of that, but it's not really why I reached out to you, because my intuition was right. You have, as we had really long conversation on our first call, even because you have such a beautiful, colorful, varied life story. And so there are so many things we want to talk about tonight. You know, your backstory, your entry into and then out of acting and now back into it again, as well as, you know, being a mom in today's society, the new work that you have coming out, which I want to make sure we give a shout out to that. So just lots of things to cover. So I want to just get right into it tonight and have you rewind the tape for us a little bit and tell us what it was like for you growing up in the 70s and 80s, and maybe talking about first a common experience with so many Gen Xers of being a child of a fairly contentious divorce, which I know was my experience too.
Yeah. Well, so the divorce predated my acting career. My parents split up when I was 4, and so I was born in 1980, so very on the latest cusp of Gen X, but definitely feel way more akin to Gen X than whatever came after it. I guess millennials. Right. Who cares? Who cares?
Can millennials be the forgotten generation now instead of us? I'm just kidding. Love the millennials.
Right. Well, they're holding it down. But yeah, so I was born in 1980. My parents split up in 1984. That's my earliest memories. I only have about like 2 memories of my parents being together. So pretty much my whole life, I have had divorced parents, and so definitely a product of that. And I think that it definitely made me a resilient person. I got 2 additional parents out of it. Both of my parents remarried. My mom's marriage didn't last super long, and then my stepfather, he passed away when I was about 20 years old, so that was unfortunate. But my stepmom is like another mom to me, so it definitely was an advantageous thing in a lot of ways. But yeah, and then I started acting when I was 6.
I remember you saying you had a pretty serendipitous start to your acting career. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was 6 years old and my mom was looking through the paper. I grew up in Westchester County in New York, which is the suburbs outside New York City. So my mom was looking through the paper and she saw an article that was written about an open audition for an untitled Adrian Lyne film starring Michael Douglas. And they were looking for girls ages 6 to 8 to play the role of Michael Douglas's daughter. And they were opening it up to people without any experience. And they kind of went through the laundry list of characteristics that they were looking for in said girl. And, my mom read through it and thought, oh, Ellen kind of fits the bill for this. And we'd never thought about acting. It was just kind of one of those things. And so she said, hey, do you want to try this? And I was like, yeah, sure. In my 6-year-old brain, not being able to wrap my mind around any of it. But it was a total lark. And we went to the audition and it was like a cattle call. I went in with 7 or 8 other girls, and they asked us group questions and asked us individual questions just to kind of get a feel for our personalities. And they liked me and called me back and kept calling me back. And eventually I got the part. So that launched my acting career from there.
Do you remember in your little 6-year-old mind and body what that experience was like for you being on a movie set as such a small child?
It was a very sort of critical and sort of before it was seminal, really. It was something that foundational. Being on set was natural to me. And my mom always said that she never saw me more focused than I was when I was on set. So it was something that I took to really naturally. And, it's funny because most people that I, talk to my age, when they think about the 80s and when we were young, they don't really have a whole lot of memories. But I think that I remember more because I was so cognizant at that point in my life. I kind of had to be, and for me, I sort of equate, whatever year was going on with whatever I was doing professionally. And so, yeah, I remember all of it. I absolutely adored being on set and behind the camera. And it just I took to it like a fish to water.
It really does seem, and I think I mentioned this to you the first time we talked, that that's your zone of genius, where you're just in the flow, you're doing something you're really good at, and it just lights you up.
Yeah, totally. And, the problem with that is that I've been so far removed from that. It's going on 30 years since I've acted professionally. So it's a long time to be out of your zone of genius.
Yeah. How many movies were you in as a child?
So I would say technically three feature films. I was in three feature
Mhm.
films. I got my start in Fatal Attraction. Right after that came out, I had a bit part in a movie called Mr. North with Anthony Edwards, which I've never even seen. Um, and yeah, I probably should watch it one of these days. I played like a critical part in the beginning that helped to like set up the premise. And they, I think, dubbed me over. Like it wasn't even my voice in the film. So there was that. And then Christmas Vacation came like 2 years after that. But I
Mhm.
was also in a short film called Alkali, Iowa. That was the last professional gig that I did. And did that, I think, in like 94, 95. But then that was then a part of a series of shorts that were all put together for a movie called Boy's Life 2. And so that wasn't like major release. That was sort of a, small theater, artsy
Mhm.
kind of film. But yeah, so three, maybe four features.
Yeah. That, I mean, that's for a young kid. That's a kind of a hefty load, so to speak.
Yeah,
And
totally.
and I want to kind of talk about how you got out of that, but I'm curious too, what is it like? And I've always wondered this about child actors, the impact of acting so young. And what's it like, for you, you're probably most known for Ruby Sue. How has
hmm
that impacted you throughout your life being kind of pigeonholed as that character?
It's really interesting because, so I would say that Fatal Attraction and Christmas Vacation are two major, major films that have really, the way I put it is like woven themselves into our social fabric. Christmas Vacation, of course, is like one of the most classic Christmas movies of all time. Millions of people watch it, like millions and millions, tens of millions watch it every year. And it, is a part of their whole tradition. But like Fatal Attraction is a whole other story, like that term Fatal Attraction is widely used in our culture, Bunny Boiler,
I
that's
say
also
boil your bunny. Yep.
yeah, exactly. And actually Bunny Boiler was, I believe, added to the Oxford English Dictionary in the last like 10, 15 years. So, there were two major films that I had a big role in. And so, the interesting thing is that for me, because I started acting at such a young age, it really was a huge part of my foundation as a person. Acting was what I did, as a kid. I didn't have after school activities like sports or piano lessons or anything like that. I went on auditions, and so that was majorly a part of who I have become as a person. Not in the sense that it has defined me as Ellen Latzen. I mean, I think that to those in the world that don't know me personally, of course, it's like they don't know Ellen Latzen, they know Ruby Sue, or they know, the little girl that looks like a boy from Fatal Attraction. But but
Never heard that.
no, oh my God, it's totally a thing, and it's true. I mean, I did kind of look like a boy, but I digress. It's and as I grew older, when I was in my 20s especially, and coming into my 30s, I really had to buck the whole idea of my career defining me. It didn't define me. I lived in spite of it. And so I really sort of like pushed my career into the closet and closed the door, and was like, that this lives in my past. It's a part of who I am, but it isn't who I am. Um, but as I've grown older, I've realized that it is a major part of my identity. And, I'm not necessarily riding the coattails of Ruby Sue, but it is something that can be leveraged. And, it is something that, I mean, I am her, she is me, and she'll always be a part of me. And, Christmas Vacation will, at least for the foreseeable, be a really meaningful and important film in the lives of many. So, it's definitely this weird dichotomy of having it be a real cornerstone of who I am as an adult, but also like not who I am, if that makes sense.
Yep, it makes perfect sense. The phrase that's coming to mind, author, podcaster that I follow, Rob Bell, says all the time, and said to me once in a session I was doing with him, to transcend and include. So that's what I hear. You know, you're transcending Ruby Sue and you're still including her.
Yeah, of
because
course.
you're standing on your own now in a different phase of your acting career and coming back to that piece of you that you still very much are connected to.
Yeah.
So given how you were like a fish to water with acting, what happened that you got away from it as you got older?
It was all logistical. So my sister is 4 years older than me, my sister Amy, and she was graduating high school in the spring, and I was coming into high school in the fall. And so I was always a very gregarious kid and had a lot of friends. And oh, no way.
Really? So shocking.
Totally. And so coming into high school, I inherited a lot of her friends, and the social scene was what was kind of important to me, and school not so much. She had gone off to college for a semester. She ended up coming back home after the first semester. It didn't really work out for her. But leaving the house essentially, and then it was just my mom and me. And my mom was, full-time working mom, busting her ass to make ends meet and to keep the lights on and everything, and to also try to maintain my career as managing my career. And so she, at that point, I think she was working nights, and so we were kind of on opposite schedules, and I didn't really give a shit about my education, and I didn't give a shit about school or classes, and I started missing a lot of school because I had a free period that then butted up against a math class, which I was like, fuck that, I'm not going to it because I hated math and didn't care about school. And so toward the end of my freshman year, it was clear that I was going to fail that math class. And my mom said she'd had enough, and she said, okay, you need structure. I can't be around to police you and to make sure that you are going to school. You're going to go to boarding school. And so even though I kind of kicked and screamed, she ended up sending me to boarding school that next year. And so the boarding school that I ended up going to changed my life. It was for the better. It's called the Putney School in Putney, Vermont. It's an old hippie school. It's been around for, Jesus, I don't even know how long now, like 100 years or something. I should know the answer to that.
You're a bad alum. You don't know.
That was exactly what I was going to say. A terrible alumni. I'll look it up and I'll let you know. But I will. Yeah, your audience is dying to know the true answer to that. But so, based on a farm, had a work ethic. It was much smaller when I went there. There were only 275 kids total. There were like 38 kids in my graduating class. But so I was sent to boarding school, and I was 15. I had to end up redoing my freshman year because the failure of this math class, they wouldn't allow me to matriculate as a sophomore. So I ended up doing 5 years of high school, but it was the best thing for me. And unfortunately, what it also meant was that it took me out of the loop. Leaving New York, where I had the proximity to New York City to audition every day, I was now in Vermont and not able to do that anymore. So that really threw a major wrench in my career. And there were like a small handful of auditions that I went on when I was at Putney, but logistically it was impossible. And so by the time I graduated, a lot of things had happened. My agency had gone out of business. I had grown, I wasn't a kid anymore. I was like a developed, like physically developed young adult. And so, the industry had kind of moved on without me. And at that point, I had been away from it for 4 years and kind of feeling like it was a little bit of a nice respite. It was a relief almost to me to be able to sort of live my life without the rigmarole, but also kind of the word that I always have hung on to for decades and that I always come back to is anonymity. I valued my anonymity, and because I was sort of in this transitional phase where if I hadn't gone to boarding school, who knows where my career could have taken me, and I probably would have been pretty successful, but that didn't happen. And so I then was kind of like on the anonymous path, on the path to obscurity, and So in the end, when I graduated, there was a summer that I had gone home and was like auditioning for commercials and stuff. I was old enough to take the train to the city, so my mom didn't have to schlep me, and I didn't land anything. It was nice to kind of do that, but it just was for naught. And so by the time I graduated, I might have gone on a couple of auditions after that, but I was really just sort of like calling up casting directors that I had worked with years prior to be like, hey, is there anything going on? And, they like threw me a couple of auditions. But at that point, I decided that I wanted to step away completely. And my reasoning then was that, again, I value my anonymity and that, I just didn't kind of want to do it anymore and I wanted to live a normal life. And so that's what I did. But it wasn't until probably about 10 years ago that I really, because then at that point, as I said, I stuffed it away in a closet and closed the door and just said, that was my part of my life then, and I'm moving on, and this is where my life is going now. This is who I am now. But there was a lot of emotions and shit that I didn't really deal with and still definitely need to. But at least now I have a better understanding of where I'm at with it. So 10 years ago, I was looking at all of this because I had delved into a podcast of my own, which never panned out. But at that point, it was, an unveiling of sort of like a look behind the curtain of the child acting industry. And so in order to take on a subject matter like that, I had to turn the light on myself and open the closet door and dust off the cobwebs and kind of peek inside and be really overwhelmed by what I found. And I remember the moment that I kind of had the realization that, in fact, the reason that I left the industry was because not as much because I wanted my anonymity and to live a normal life, but because the industry had, in fact, moved on without me, and that there wasn't really room for me at that point, that I was going to have to work harder than I was willing to in order to make it back. And that seemed like a losing battle to me. And so I left before the industry could reject me. And the other part of that whole realization was also realizing that I've never been as passionate or as focused or as fulfilled by anything professionally or really creatively since then. And I've just been chasing that dragon for decades now. And that was a massive pill to swallow. It was like really, really heavy. I think I had like an anxiety attack after I realized that because it was so major.
Yeah, it's almost sounds like at the time anyway, it was a protective mechanism, when you were a teenager.
1,000%.
Because one of the things I was thinking, and I don't know if this feels true for you, and I'm making a huge assumption about actors in the acting world that I know nothing about. So I have an assumption that for a lot of child actors, being a teenager is hard enough. There's a lot of identity crises that we go through as a teenager trying to figure out who we are. So I can't even imagine how much more complicated that is for somebody that's in the acting world. And so you, at that critical time when you're a teenager going through your own identity stuff, I was kind of amazed and impressed by the fact that you could just sort of let it go and not feel a loss of identity because you weren't in the acting world anymore. And so it's really fascinating, though, a couple of decades later to realize, oh, no, I actually sort of did protect myself in some way because I wanted to get out before they kicked me out.
Yeah.
So it's just really fascinating to me.
It is. And what I'll say about that is I didn't have a choice. My leaving the industry initially was sort of thrust upon me, but everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And so, I don't like have ill will toward my mom for pulling me out of acting and sending me to boarding school because boarding school was exactly what I needed. And, everybody always gets all caught up in the what ifs and the parallel timelines or, infinite universes, the one where I didn't go to boarding school and I kept on acting. And the result may have been the same. Maybe my career could have fizzled out. Maybe I wouldn't have been successful. And then maybe that would have been even more devastating because there wasn't a catalyst to my leaving to begin with. So, and it's funny because this is actually the first time that I'm even like really thinking about that. So.
Yeah. So once you had that big realization that, oh, I left before they could kick me out, How
Hmm.
did you end up working through that?
Through the podcast. So I created one episode. It was called Watched. That was my like cool name for the episode, was Watched.
I like it.
And thank you. Yeah, I mean it's one of the many projects that I have started and then kind of put up on the shelf and never picked up again.
Yeah.
But which is fine. I'm at peace with that. But I did the initial episode. uh, So, it was about an hour long, and I had interviewed, oh my God, why am I blanking on Justin's last name? He was the son from Kramer versus Kramer, and he's a friend of mine. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Justin, I'm totally blanking on your fucking last name.
Oh God, I
But
know it too. This is I would
Justin
let's just
Henry,
blame.
Justin
Oh,
Henry,
okay, yeah, yeah, yep. I can blame it
and
on menopause for me. You're not.
maybe perimenopause, but also mom brain. So
There you
Justin
go. Yeah,
Henry,
hormones,
and
just
this
hormones.
totally, totally. So I interviewed Justin, and the episode was called The Natural because, like, they referred to me, I was referred to as a natural, and they referred to Justin as a natural too. And we had sort of similar entering into the industry. Our stories were similar. And so, in talking to Justin, and I had a friend who was helping me with the podcast too, who was, my producer, let's say, that kind of helped me work through this stuff. And he was really critical in helping to kind of like pull that thread and to help me sort of piece it together. So he was really helpful in my kind of working through that. And then also how to translate that into the podcast and having that be kind of like the baseline for the rest of the series, which never happened.
Which is okay, as you said. Things go on a shelf.
Totally.
Sometimes they come back off, as we'll
Yep.
talk about here in a second. So, where do you feel like you are now with that realization of you leaving acting before it could leave you?
It's heavy, I so again, in pulling that thread, I have realized, so after I graduated from boarding school, I took some time off, and then I ended up going to art school in Oakland, California. What was the California College of Arts and Crafts is now called California College of the Arts. And I went for glass blowing, which was something that I did at the arts camp that I went to prior to going to boarding school. So, like, the arts and creativity has always been a major part of my life.
It's just in you.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so, I was creative when I was a kid. I was creatively, working full time as an actor. I went to arts camp. I went to arts boarding school. I went to art college. And what I found, and I was paying for college with my own money, and it was expensive. And I realized sort of 2.5 semesters in that it wasn't really something that I wanted to be doing. And so I left school and started working full time. And that was like when I kind of like really entered the normal working world, not the entertainment working world. Because I've been working
Us
since I was
regular
6,
people.
but right, yeah. You surfs. Yeah. So looking back on all of that, part of that realization was realizing that all of the emotion and everything that I said about, not having been as passionate or as fulfilled or, all of those things by acting, I realized that after I left and like really left, because I was creative, and I was like definitely doing creative artsy things when I was at Putney School. But when I went to art college, when I went to CTAC, I did not have that drive anymore. And so, again, one of the things that I realized was that my creativity kind of left me when I left my
Mm,
career behind. Or at least
mm,
that's what I tell myself. I'm trying to kind of work through that now,
mm.
because that's something that I have like that's like a crutch that I've fallen back on since realizing that. And it's kind of an excuse as to why I'm not bringing any of that creativity back into my life now, why I'm not making space for it. But it's bullshit.
Yeah,
But
I'm
that's truly how I
curious.
felt.
Did it leave you, or did you not give it an outlet anymore?
The outlet was there. I just didn't have the drive anymore.
Mm.
And so I can't remember if we talked about this on our call, but one of the other things that I realized, I don't know if it was in the thread pulling moment, or if it was just like it was later, but it was definitely after I had had this realization, that I had such a hard time being inspired. Inspiration was something that like had left me, and it was so profound, that loss of inspiration, that for years, like literally years, I couldn't remember the word inspiration because it had left me completely. And it's not that I wasn't inspired. Of course, you can't not be inspired by things. Like I was, but as far as creatively and having that drive, having that motivation, having that like real spark, that just didn't really exist in me anymore. You know, if it did, it was very fleeting. It would be there for like a second. But like my flame, my pilot light was still lit, but the burner was not on at all.
I honestly think that makes a lot of sense. And from an outsider's perspective, I think it took a lot of strength and awareness. You're a very self-aware person, as we talked about, to let it go for a while, because I don't know if you've heard the term the void. Have you ever heard the void?
In terms of what?
Of being in a void, where like that dark place.
Oh, yeah.
In our dark little corner, we're just in the void, almost like curled up in a ball, no creativity, no inspiration, nothing. And the reason I say that it makes sense is because I think that's sort of the natural flow of life that more of us it would behoove us to embrace.
Yeah.
It's expansion and contraction, expansion and contraction. And I think had you continued to just keep pushing toward acting or who knows, keep pushing toward art school or glass blowing, which by God, that would have been so amazing. There has to come a point in time where you're in this hibernation period, because there's still stuff going on beneath the surface in that hibernation period. We just may not be aware of it, which I think is so evident now, given that you're kind of coming back full circle into acting.
It's true. And I mean, you know, I definitely could have used therapy then. I for sure need it now, but I'm in a much better position now. I'm older. I've had time to think about it. I have matured to the point where I'm not afraid to kind of crack open those doors. Mm-hmm. And I mean, self-betterment has always been my thing throughout life, but I wasn't as serious about it. Maybe not serious, but I wasn't as like, I guess, equipped to really meet some of those issues head on as I am now. And so, you know, I think, like I said, the maturity and just the life experience and the willingness, like the real willingness to say, okay, let's crack it open and let's deal with it, because, you know, I would love to unload some of this baggage and to understand, you know, and then to move on, so that this isn't sort of this like dark cloud to bring myself out of the void, as you said. And I have. I mean, I've done a lot of work around that, and I've like really been doing some major work just like in the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. I decided towards the end of the year that, you know, this turning over a new leaf, not even just a new leaf, just like completely rewriting my story. And there's a lot of work to be done there. And the creativity part is playing a major role for me right now.
Well, I think the void it's like the compost, right? Like you got to be as a friend of mine says, she says, the pit of shit. Like you got to be in the pit of shit. And I think that's where the compost is, you know, and that's how amazing shit grows, is from that compost. So yeah, I am very inspired by your journey. And one of the things that you said when we talked the first time is that you are actually somebody who really embraces change, that change has not been the hiccup, for lack of a better word, that it is for most people.
Yep.
So have you been able to identify what it is about you that allows you to embrace change more easily than the rest of us, maybe?
Maybe because I've had so much change in my life. And it's funny because I can remember very clearly a time growing up in my adolescence where I was absolutely, completely terrified of change. Like, hide under the covers, you know, like la 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 la, pretending like shit is not going to change. But you know, having gone through divorce with my parents, and having been a fucking actor from the time I was 6 years old, and going to boarding school and going, you know, doing all of these things, I became extremely adaptable. And so I think that it kind of happened organically. I don't know that there was necessarily a time. Actually, no, I take that back. I think it probably happened like where the shift happened, where I saw the value of change and actually went toward it, was after I had graduated from Putney and took some time off. I wasn't doing anything with my time. I was smoking a lot of pot and, like doing mushrooms and ecstasy, like on the weekends, or, not even, just like when I wanted to with my friends, and experimenting and enjoying my time. And I had my money that I had from acting, so I was able to like travel a little bit and just enjoy myself. But at the same time, I wasn't really doing anything fulfilling, and I became really depressed. And the other thing too that happened was that was when my stepfather passed away, and he had a malignant brain tumor. He had been in Vietnam and exposed to Agent Orange, and so that killed him. And he and my mom had broken up right after I went to Putney. And so that was tough. And I was very close with him. And he had started seeing this girlfriend who was a total fucking bitch, and like took him away from us. And it just was really difficult. And so, sorry, I'm digressing a little bit, but John, my stepfather, he started to get sick, but we didn't really know it. And he was like having memory loss and memory problems. And he didn't come to my high school graduation because he forgot. And, being a stupid teenager that I was super pissed off about that. And even after it was revealed that he actually had a legitimate reason, that he had a malignant brain tumor, that he was dying from it, he had moved down to Florida to be with his mom and his sister, so that they could take care of him. My sister went down to see him when he was sick. I didn't go because there was just so many different things kind of caught up in that. And, he died, and I never got to say goodbye to him. And I like, and this is like a bunch of other shit that I need to work through, was that, being angry with him, and I should have forgiven him and gone to see him and said goodbye. But so that all weighed very heavily on me. And I was just in this super stagnant place, as depressed as I've ever been, and feeling like I needed something. I needed a change. And that was when I started looking for anything to do. And again, glassblowing was something that I had done and really enjoyed at the arts camp that I had gone to. And so I started looking at programs, whatever, like somewhere I could take classes or do something. And in my, searching on the internet in the year 2000, I found this program out in Oakland where I could get a BFA in glass and live in California. And I was like, let's apply there. And I applied and I got in, and I packed what I could carry and I moved out there sight unseen. And that was the start of my like journey of my adulthood, and where change started to be a positive for me. And, I was somebody that forever like lived in the present. And if something wasn't working out, I needed to change it. And this all kind of comes back to my acting thing being, again, like chasing the fulfillment and the passion and the whatever, trying to find that, because I had dozens of different jobs in different fields, and, lived in 6 different states, and, had like 45 different addresses over 20 years. I mean, like always moving, always just change, 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 change. And it change really became my identity. It was the type of thing where, like friends would say, even to this day, they're like, "Are you still in Michigan?" And I'm like, "No, man, I lived in Michigan in 5 years." But like, it's not their fault, because, before Michigan, I was in LA, and before LA, I was in San Francisco, and before San Francisco, I was in Colorado, and before Colorado, I was in just like all over the place. So, change really became an extremely important part of my life. And because I couldn't, it was that stagnancy. Like I can't, and I still can't deal with the stagnancy. But I'm married now, and I am anchored where I am. I have roots now. I have a family. I have a daughter. I have 2 fucking annoying dogs I love. And, I can't just pick up and go anymore, which, there's a part of me that's sad about that. But of course I'm glad, because I've found the home that I'm looking for. I've found my place. But now what's missing is that creative side.
I think what's the big takeaway I have from your story and that journey and the change piece of it is that what we often don't realize is there's so much unhealed grief when we go from, change to change to change, whether they are voluntary changes that we want to make or involuntary changes that happen to us, like somebody dying. And it's good to embrace change and be resilient about it. And it can have a tipping point where we're using it as a distraction and an escape mechanism.
Totally.
So I just, like, my big takeaway from what you were saying and all of that is that change can be something that can be very healing, and there can still be some grief associated with it. Getting married, having a kid, and losing that more free-spirited, independent, which a lot of us Gen Xers struggle with, right? Like, we are very independent and free-spirited. And I talk to so many moms that this is becoming more quote unquote acceptable to voice now, but so many moms who are finally saying how much they miss that single part of themselves or that freedom. And that not too long ago wasn't something that moms felt like they could actually say. They'd be shunned as a shitty mom for saying such a horrible thing. And I think we have to embrace that grief. It's okay to love being a mom and grieve your old self too, right? So
it's healthy.
So absolutely. And we don't do grief in this country at all, let alone well.
No.
So you have a daughter and you've been married for how long now?
2 years.
Okay. So fairly recently, and your daughter's a year and a half, a little less than a year and a half?
Yeah, she's 20 months.
Yeah. So you're very much in that sort of fresh grief around, as you said, coming into a lifestyle that's more stable, more stationary than it was before. So how do you give space for that grief?
It's a good question. I don't know that I do. I mean, talking about it helps. And, it's funny because my husband, he always said, like, I was afraid to fall in love with you because you were this gypsy, and I was afraid that you were going to run off again. But I didn't. He was able to lasso this filly.
That was the image coming to my mind, and I'm like, I don't know if that's how you want to say that, but that's what's coming.
Yep, it's soul sisters, remember? But yeah, I mean, he totally understands that I had a whole completely different life and lifestyle prior to, sort of like putting up, my hat and my dancing boots and, my wanderlust jacket, whatever sort of fucking
Did you have
metaphors.
A jacket that said wanderlust?
No, I should though. It was just a weak metaphor.
I'm picturing a jean jacket that's bedazzled on the back that says.
Oh, right, there you go. Wanderlust. Yeah, totally. But he recognizes that the life that we live together now is vastly different, and that it leaves me sort of wanting for certain aspects of those things. Like, there was a point in my height of social dumb that I would see 300 concerts a year when I was living in San Francisco. I mean,
there's a huge part of me that just got super envious over that.
Right? I'm envious of that person. That's just like, that was, I was extremely fortunate, and that was my life. And, live music is at the base of what connects Ed and myself. We both are very passionate about it, but as parents now, we see far less of it. These days it's like we're lucky to see 10 shows in a year. But he recognizes that there are certain things that I kind of need in order for my flower not to totally wilt, and he does his best to help accommodate those things. The band Fish is my favorite touring band, and I try to see them as much as I can. They do like a 4-night run mostly every year at Madison Square Garden, and so I went and saw them for a night. Was able to see my friends and be with my cousin, who is my like other like soulmate in life, and that's like our thing that we do, and it's important for us to spend time together too. And so Ed is really good about nurturing those things when he can, but it's really just about recognizing that I have certain needs still, and now they have to be sort of on the modest side as far as fulfilling them, but trying to do it where I can. and just understanding that my life is different now, and that, I have different priorities and different focuses, and having to be okay with, my daughter and my family is my life, but I also have these other things that create my life as well, and needing to give them credence as well.
The mom guilt is heavy. So many of my friends struggle with that mom guilt to the point where it's paralyzing, that they don't feel like they literally have the permission to go do anything for themselves, whether it's hang out with a friend or go get their hair done or whatever it is. What wisdom would you hope to share for other moms out there who are noticing that they have some yearning, some longing to have a little more freedom, a little more independence, a little more of like their old selves back? What would you say to them?
I would say that you're going to be no good to anybody if you are denying yourself certain, I don't want to even call them luxuries because they're not luxuries. When you become a parent, especially a mom, especially a stay-at-home mom, the term luxury takes on a new meaning, because taking a shower is a luxury. And, having a moment to yourself is a luxury. And they're not luxuries at all. They're self-care. And so I would say the same thing. You need to be able to fulfill these parts of your life, even if it's just like once or twice a year, whatever it is. You need to be able to fill up your cup, at least somewhat, because if you're running on empty, you're not going to be good to anybody. And, for me, it's less so about the mom guilt. It's more about, so Ed and I, we say we live on an island, even though we are landlocked here in Pennsylvania, but the proverbial island where we don't have a community here. We have yet to meet friends, although we're working on that. We don't have a village, as they say. And so it's really just us. We found a babysitter, so like we can have the occasional night out. We've been out maybe a handful of times since Charlotte was born, and we don't have family that's close by that can just watch the kids or watch the dogs or whatever it is. And so that is the element that makes it so much harder, because it's only the two of us really to be able to kind of lean on one another. So if there's something that one of us wants to do, then it's got to be put on the other. And I feel like we, and really I mean, certainly Ed too, but I'm talking about me right now.
It's all about us. It's okay.
He's not part of this interview, is he?
No.
No.
It could be if he wants to be, but no.
Right. No, fuck him. He's asleep anyway, I think. Anyway, so, things that I want to do, it would be a whole lot easier if we had the ability to utilize people. We don't have help.
Yeah.
So, Ed has to really hold it down when there are things that I want to do, because I'm the one that's holding it down all the rest of the time. So again, for me, it's not guilt, because I'm giving as much of myself as I absolutely can to my kid and to my family. But I know that I am going to be worthless to them if I'm not filling up my cup.
Yeah. And we hear that all the time.
You have to.
Yet women have such a hard time digesting that medicine, right? Something in women does not want us to believe that it's okay to take care of ourselves first.
That's probably the martyr. That's the martyr part.
It's so much. It's
of you.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. That could be a whole nother podcast in and of itself. Like
yeah.
The martyrdom, the social conditioning, the patriarchy, like you name it.
I'm over that bullshit.
I know. Yeah. Been there, done that. I want my money back. But I tell the story all the time of, I firmly believe that my mom would still be alive, and she was of the boomer generation. If she had felt like it wasn't a condemnation of her worth as a person to actually take care of herself.
Yeah.
If she had taken time to take better care of her health, get better sleep, eat better, just take a vacation, do something for herself besides work. She worked 3 jobs and it killed her. It literally killed her. And so I don't know how much more of a cautionary tale moms need besides that,
Well, and I think that you bring up a good point that she was of a generation where that just wasn't acceptable. Yep. the moms took care of the kids and they didn't have needs. And, once you were a mom, you completely gave up yourself. And that was it. You become this totally, wholly selfless person.
Not only mom, but you took care of everybody.
I mean, yeah, totally.
Either you were single. My mom was a single mom after my parents got divorced, but she still took care of her dad, like all her guys that she worked for. I mean, she took care of everybody, people at the church. I mean, it's just all about caretaker energy. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, it's human nature that we all need fuel to run, right? And not just the sleep, water, and food. We need the things that fulfill us and our souls in order to really to run our machines. Otherwise, we're just going to be zombies and shells of human beings, and that's no way to live. And that's not healthy for anybody in your dynamic either. You can't be a good partner, you can't be a good parent. You have these are absolute necessities. And I mean, I embody that. I believe it wholeheartedly. And the reason why I was totally balking at the whole idea of the martyrdom is that what's the fucking point of that? Don't bite off your nose to spite your face. Live your fucking life. And I get it that a lot of people don't have those luxuries, working moms, right? Single moms, single parents that are taking on the whole load. It's easier said than done, that don't have any help even from a partner. I get it, but you got to find a way, because you're going to be no good. It's the thing that I equate it to is, you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you can put it on somebody else. And that is wholly it. You need to be able to breathe in order to help the person next to you. You have to be solid. You have to be strong. You have to be healthy in order to take care of anybody else. Yeah. Including yourself.
So how is this being a mom, and a fairly new mom, and raising a daughter in the world that we are in right now? What are you afraid of when it comes to the world your daughter is going to grow up in?
Everything. For so many years, I was staunch about not wanting kids. And my fear of what the world was going to be was part of it. But in the end, I said, I can't be afraid of those things. I have to, I want a child, and I want to bring a child into this world. And the way that I kind of reconciled those fears was knowing that I was a strong enough person that I would do my absolute damnedest to raise them in a way that they would have all the tools that they need to at least combat whatever the negative shit is in the world that they're going to come against. And so, Trump's taking office in a matter of days. And
no, he's not. I'm still living in the West Wing land of President Bartlett is my president.
Totally. I need to watch that show again. It was just so good.
I just watched it for the first. I didn't watch it originally.
Oh, really?
I just watched it.
I didn't either, but I watched it in the last 10 years, and it just was so fucking good. But
yeah,
the 90s was a different time too.
Sorry, I digressed.
Or 2000s, I guess. No, it's okay. But it's, that reality, unfortunately, is super scary. And, it's interesting because when we talked the first time, I was still in this place of being very on top of the news and really wanting to know everything that's going on. And the pendulum has kind of shifted a little bit. And at this juncture right now, I am hunkering down. I am not on social media as much. I'm really just kind of putting my head back in the sand a little bit. I'm not fully, but I just, and I've heard that there are a lot of Democrats and liberals that are feeling this way, that they're just they're fucking over it. They're over just, headline after headline of the doom scrolling. How much fucking doom scrolling can you do? But, this is the reality, and Trump is taking office again. And, I'm just doing my best to put my focus on raising my daughter as a decent human being who cares about humanity and who cares about other people and has decency and is just a fucking good person. Because with all of the issues, racism and sexism and all the isms, right? That all starts at home. It all starts at home. And so,
amen to that, sister.
On the flip side, you know, decency and being a good human, like that is learned too. And so my husband and I are going to do our best to instill as many of these qualities into our daughter as possible. And just to, I don't know, I mean, I have no idea what the next 4 years or hopefully it's only 4 years, knocking on wood over here, have in store for us. But, part of the reason why, honestly, part of the reason why I want to like start working again is so that I can afford to send her to private school, because we live in a really good school system here, but like the way that everything's going now, I can't trust that she's going to be safe in a public school. Not even like, I'm not even talking about school shootings because that's like a whole other fucking thing. But I'm just talking about, like I don't want her, like I want her to be in Montessori schools. I want her to be in like in schools that are of our ilk, that are free thinking and conducive to decency and goodness and like actual real legitimate education. And I would say that probably the vast majority of the kids and the families that are sending their kids to these sorts of schools are not going to be raising kids that are going to look at my daughter and say, your body, my choice. And that's the sort of shit that I don't want to shield her from it, but there's no fucking reason for her to have to be subject to it either. Mm-mm. So, I've got some time to kind of work on that stuff, to get my finances in order to be able to send her to the schools that she needs to go to, so that I am assured that she is around the right people and being taught by the right people and being taught the right fucking curriculum, and just doing my best to educate myself. Like, again, I said my head's a little bit in the sand right now, but I think that's because I'm hunkering down and really saving the energy that I've got right now to focus on what I need to do for myself, my own well-being. Because again, that comes back to taking care of yourself first in order to take care of everybody else. But I'm going to fight the good fight. I'm going to continue to wear shirts like this.
Yeah, for the people who can't see it, our daughters deserve
choices. And it's believe that. And so I'm just going to do my best.
It does come back to putting the oxygen mask on yourself first, because I've found myself too really checking out of just all news until the LA fires happened. And now I've been almost obsessively watching the news about the LA fires because my heart breaks for them so much. Aside from that, just really checking out from social media and from the news, because that's me putting on like 10 oxygen masks all at once, because I think there is a balance between being informed and a balance in the other side of that, just being too obsessed.
Totally.
Right? Like we have to be informed, and we also have to take care of our own mental and physical and emotional well-being in the midst of that. We don't have to watch every single news cycle 24/7 and be on social media doom scrolling 24/7 either to feel like we're doing something, because a lot of that's just like a false sense of I'm doing something. I'm like educating myself and knowing all the things. And I think it's perfectly fine to check out of that and take care of yourself so that we can continue to do things for ourselves, for our kids, for our communities.
Absolutely. Because I think, just like anything else, it's fine to take a break from something. It's healthy too. And especially from this sort of thing. And I'm taking my break right now, but I will come back, and I will sort of pick up where I left off. And I'm sure that my rage meter will be even higher at that point. But I'm going to do what I got to do, because I had a fucking kid and I had a girl, and she's got it stacked against her. And so it's up to me to make sure that she's going to have the best life possible and be protected and given the freedoms that she deserves. And so fighting for that fighting for those that can't fight for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lesson my mom instilled in me a lot growing up. And it just like, I'll confess, I wasn't somebody growing up who was really, and I'm still not completely in tuned with my feminine energy. I've always had, and I always will have a lot more masculine energy. That has nothing to do with man or woman. It just has to do with the quality of the energy. So I'm a little more aggressive, a little more fiery, a little more like rough and tumble.
Yeah.
And I've always been that way. And so I have always been somebody who it was honestly lost on me for most of my life that I could have been discriminated against. It didn't even really occur to me until about the last maybe 10 years or so, if that. And I think a lot of that's because my mom just raised me not to take anybody's shit. And that's a privilege I had, as a white person, white girl growing up in rural Nebraska. It was easy for me to stand up for myself.
Yep.
And so that's not a privilege a lot of people have, to feel like they can be safe enough to actually stand up for themselves. So I've just always felt like that. And it's not been until the last, maybe 10 or so, and especially last 5 years, where I'm like, yeah, there's probably sometimes when I didn't realize that I was being discriminated against just because I was a woman.
Yeah.
And so it just, the fact that we have to raise our children, and especially our daughters, to feel like you have to fight for yourself and you have to be vigilant is it's just where we are. And we've been there for a while, for sure. Like my mom taught me, there was this little kid on the playground in elementary school that when the girls started wearing bras, like in 5th-ish grade, he would run around the playground and snap the girls' bra straps. And so I came home and told my mom that one day, and she said, if he does that to you, you warn him once. If he does it again, you knock him on his ass. And so I went back to school the next day. At recess, he's like came over and snapped my bra strap. And I'm like, I'm warning you. And he laughed and did it again. And I punched him in the face and knocked him on his ass. And who got detention?
You did, of course.
Me. And who came and sat with me in detention? My mom. She was like, I think her exact words were, that little pervert is not going to put his hands on my daughter.
Fuck
so
yeah.
This was back in the 80s. But that's where we are. And we need those mama bears. We need our kids to be protected by the mama bears like you.
Yeah.
And so your daughter has a good mama bear fighting for her.
Thank you. Trying. I mean, it's an uphill battle for both of us, but we're in it together.
Yeah. So come back now. We hit on this a little bit, we've come back a little full circle to get back into acting. And I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to tell people not only how that happened, but what it is that's happening, because you really need some community and crowdsourcing behind what you're about to enter into. So tell us about, first of all, tell us about the decision. When did you make the decision that you were going to get back into acting?
So, I would say that the arc of it all has been happening over the last 10 years. It started about 10 years ago. I was living in San Francisco and kind of started to get this itch and feeling like, okay, I'm, again, the change, right? Feeling the itch for the change. But it was different this time. This was a specific itch. And feeling like I kind of wanted to get back into entertainment in some way, shape, or form, but not really sure what that looked like. And it was at that point that, the idea of a podcast sort of was planted. And, at that juncture, I felt, okay, I want to get back in entertainment. Podcast sounds good. Some sort of voice work is, I think, where I want to be, because I don't think I want to be in front of the camera, because again, the anonymity thing, really like hanging on to that. And so since that point, it's sort of progressively gotten more itchy, and I haven't really been able to scratch that itch, and that's why it's getting itchier. But also, again, like everything that's happened, from starting to pull that thread and really seeing head on the issues that we talked about before about, my realization about my career and the passion and all the things, and then having it grow year by year, thinking like, okay, well, maybe I guess I could kind of get back into acting a little bit, but I'm not really there yet. But still being drawn in that direction, but not really giving it a whole lot of attention. Again, because moving all over the place, from LA to Michigan to Philadelphia to where I am in PA now. And then it's probably been about 2 years since this happened. I started getting solicited on Instagram by autograph agents. And they were like, oh, you should head. I know you're not in the circuit. I would love to represent you and blah, blah, blah. And then finally I responded to one, it was an agency that was out in LA that looked reputable. And I was like, okay, maybe this is something that I would be interested in doing as, like a passive income or whatever. And, it was the type of thing that autograph signings and events and things like that. I really turn my nose up at them because it was the type of thing that I thought, well, why do you want my autograph? Like, what's so special about that? I'm just a regular person, right? Like, really being very attached to this idea of like normalcy and not an actor and all this stuff. And so, kind of shifting my perception of what that is to realizing that, okay, like it's fine to want somebody's autograph, but at the same time, realizing that it's an opportunity to your fans and to interact with them and to kind of like give back, right? They have supported you, all over the years. Like, this is your way of giving back to them to, to say thank you and to hear their tales and to have them gush all over you about how much they love you. But, but really to just, it's a humbling experience. And so I was like, okay, in that regard, that's something I can really get behind, and if you can make a little bit of money doing it, then cool. So I signed with these guys and did less than a handful of events so not last year, but in 23.
I know. Time flies.
This is like an issue that I have. I say 2003, even though I mean 2023, because it's like a 20 and a 20, and it's like
mom brain.
Okay. Numbers. We don't mix. So in 23, and I ended up meeting another agent at one of the last signings that I did with these guys, and he poached me. And so he has a much smaller boutique firm. He does very like hands-on work with his clients, and I appreciated that. And so I ended up going with him and did a handful of events with him last year, one of which was a signing in San Antonio where he had like 5 of his clients there. And so it was me and 4 other celebrities, and we were all signing, and it was over Labor Day weekend. And so I got to like be away from home for 3 days without a kid, no breastfeeding, no anything. I was like able to drink and do what I want and have a fucking bed to myself and, sleep or not sleep really. And
the simple pleasures.
Right. The luxuries, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so having this moment with myself, but also with these other actors, 2 of whom were child actors, who, I would consider contemporaries in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And just like sitting and rapping with them and kind of connecting and being back in those dynamics. And it was just like, fuck, I miss this. Like, I miss what they're talking. Like, there was like a yearning. And even, I think it was actually during the trip. It was the last day that we were doing signings. And I sat there and I said, I said to Lucas, my appearance agent, I said, I think I want to get back into acting. He was like, I am behind that 100%. Absolutely. And I'll help you in any way that I can. And I was like, okay, cool. And so that was the moment. It was really just recognizing and allowing myself to really be honest and to say it, because it's such a loaded thing. So loaded. The idea of like getting back into acting, right? This former child star, if you can even fucking call me that.
Come back. Which I just don't like.
Totally. You don't like it? Well, that's hokey. But it's true, right? Everybody loves a comeback. And and because of all of the heavy shit that the baggage that I hang on to from this whole thing, I really wasn't allowing myself to like fully admit that this was something that I wanted for whatever stupid reason. But I finally felt, and really like thinking about it too in terms of the life that I'm living now and the lifestyle that I have and where I am physically or geographically, I should say. And, thinking about even what that would look like. And I did. I put some thought into it and I said, okay, I live close enough to New York where if I were to land a part there, it's 2 hours to get there and it's fine. I could like work out the logistics of Charlotte being taken care of. And, there's a lot of commercial work and that's lucrative and it doesn't take a long time. And, like I kind of have like a regular sort of average look to me, like normal American woman. They're looking for people like that, I'm sure. And yeah, I still do have an acting ability. I don't think that that's ever left me. That's not a muscle that I have used in a long time, but I'm sure that it may be a little rusty, but I'm sure it's still there. And just, thinking about like, and even auditions, everything, not everything, but, a lot of auditions can be done virtually anyway. So it's not like I have to be in LA or New York or wherever in order to be vying for these roles. And I said, okay, like, I think that this is enough for me to say, yeah, I want to do this. I think it's possible and I want to. And it was a really powerful moment for me because the energy that I got just from making that determination and from like the feeling, it just like that the pilot light started to kind of light again, the burner was kind of going on. And that was meaningful. It was fucking like profound.
Mm-hmm.
And so, once I made that determination, I was like, okay, like I want to do this. And that lit the fire. And so I've just been trying to kind of like keep that ball rolling because that's been classically my problem is, with motivation. It's like, it's hard for me to motivate myself. But when the right thing is there, then the motivation will persist. And I'm also doing the work, to try to like stoke the fire. And, so since September, I've really just been kind of on this path and intending, really trying to manifest. I don't know that I think it was more of like a passive manifesting, but it was still manifesting. And then, so what
Can I
happened
pause
was,
on that for just a second?
yeah, totally.
Because I get so excited over shit like this because it's just so inspiring to me and so affirming of things that I think people like you and me try to practice, in really setting an intention and a vision for our life. And I think the word manifesting gets a bad rap. Again, could be a whole nother podcast on itself.
Right.
But what I got so lit up over when I heard you say this is you were talking about the energy. I read a quote the other day in a blog and I can't remember who wrote it. I'll have to look it up and I'll credit it in the show notes. And the quote was something like, and I'm going to bobble it a little bit. When soul meets soul, there is an exchange of energy, an inspiration occurs. It was something like that. And I'm like, that's exactly it. And so when you were talking about after all this time, after 30 years of kind of being quote out of the industry, you get back in the orbit of people who are in the industry. You get back into the industry a little bit. It's like all those souls just started speaking to you again. There was that exchange of energy and boom, there's your inspiration after all this time of being in that void, that cocoon, that pit of shit, like whatever it was.
Yeah.
There it is. And I think that's, you look back on it, you're like, well, duh, that's how life happens. But when you're in it, you don't see it. And so it's just so affirming for me to hear your story and be like, yeah, that's how this shit works.
It's true. And, like I'm not super woo woo. I do subscribe to it somewhat, but from like that Gen X, pessimistic, fucking cynical perch up here on our fucking soapbox. But, enough that I subscribe. And I know that I'm a powerful person. I know that I make shit happen. Like I know that energies surround me and that given the correct motivation and inspiration and drive that I can harness them. And so that's really what I'm doing right now. And I realized that I was like, okay, like if I want this to happen, I can fucking make it happen. I'm powerful and that I can do all these things and manifest. So it worked because, and I'll preface this by saying I do get a certain amount of solicitations during the holidays, yourself included, which I was very pleased to receive. But anyway, so there was a message that came in from a guy named Scott Goldberg. And I was like, hey, Ellen, I don't even remember what the hell it said, but, it was something to the effect of, I'm directing this new movie. It's a horror movie, about a serial killer. If you're near the New York area, I'd love for you to be a part of it. Let me know if you're interested. Shit. Okay.
Out of nowhere, essentially.
Totally. Yes.
Yep.
Completely. And so I wrote back to him and I was like, hey, I'm not far from New York and, I'm definitely interested. Let's talk. And so basically what that materialized into was, so it's a movie called Vernon, a Serial Killer Manifesto. And
great title, by the way.
It's totally very independent film. So it's being directed by this guy, Scott. He had his directorial debut with a movie called The Forest Hills, which just came out, also independent, but, a much larger budget. And it had Edward Furlong and Shelley Duvall. It was Shelley Duvall's last movie before she passed away. And a woman named Felissa Rose, who is like a scream queen. I guess her best known film was Summer Camp, something like that. Horror is not really my genre, but for those that are into it would recognize her. Anyway, she was in it as well, and so that kind of gave him some credibility. And I was like, okay, and Lucas, my appearance agent, knows Felissa and was able to, kind of like talk to her and get the skinny about him and her experience with the film and give me a little bit of insight so that I was going into it feeling like, okay, this isn't like a total scam, first of all. Secondly, this guy has some clout. And so he said, yeah, it's the deal with the movie. The premise is that it's like a documentary style that's basically being filmed from the perspective of the serial killer. His brother is the guy that's filming the movie. And so basically any part that you play is going to be like a small part, but, it would be great to have you involved. And I'm like, that's awesome. I'm happy to look into this. And, he said it's being crowdfunded. So, we have a GoFundMe or sorry, an Indiegogo and we're trying to raise the funds. And so, the making of the movie is contingent on whether or not we make the funds. And I was like, okay, like I totally get that. But, we had a whole back and forth about it. I said, I'm totally interested, but I see this as an opportunity for both of us. Because if this is my first film back in 30 years, then, and you guys are still kind of like writing the script, then if you can find a part for me that is memorable, I think that would be awesome. People would be interested in like seeing Ruby Sue come back to the screen. So that would like bring interest to your film. And, if you could make a part for me, that would be like an epic death or something like, something memorable, that would be cool. And so, he was totally receptive to that. And so, he like wants to work with me in that respect and even might want to like maybe write a little bit more of a supporting role for me, which would be great. It's all for naught if the funds are not raised, but it's, as I said to you before, I'm super excited about it, but I have zero attachment to it because if it happens, that's amazing. Awesome. If not, it's totally fine because again, this is sort of more of a catalyst to give me the confidence and the energy, right? Like this is the fairy dust. This is the fucking woo-woo shit that is sprinkled all over me to, help keep the fire going and to attract what I ultimately want, which is to revive my career. And, so that's super exciting. And that was on the back burner. And what I don't think I did tell you that there was another casting director that had reached out to me too on Instagram. She's local to where I live. And, she casts for a guy that like makes movies around here. And, she's like, and I connected with her and I said, I'm totally interested and, here's my information. She's like, great. Give me your email. I'll like make sure that you're at the top of the list for, things that come down the pike. And I'm like, awesome. So really like throwing irons in the fire.
That's really exciting. And I firmly believe, and this is why I get kind of triggered over the way some people talk about manifestation, because I think manifestation is actually much more profound than how some people talk about it. And the way some people talk about it, and I was just talking about this on a recent podcast episode I put out, that we have a saying in Nebraska that you can wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up first. And that's how a lot of people think of manifestation. If I just wish hard enough, and if I visualize it enough and meditate on it enough, it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. That is not what you did. You had the vision, you had the intuition, you had that spark of energy and inspiration again, and then you took action. You don't have to have the whole 100 yards figured out. You just have to have the next little yard in front of you and take that step. And that's what you're doing. So even him reaching out seemingly out of the blue on Instagram wasn't really out of the blue, because you were taking little steps. You were putting yourself in alignment with what your path is going to be now.
Yeah, totally. And raising my frequency big time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't think that's woo-woo at all. That I think that phrase kind of pisses me off, because I think that's just people denigrating like the deeper spirit. Not that you use it pissed me off. I'm saying the fact that word exists pisses me off, because it denigrates like the deeper spiritual shit that's really going on beneath the surface.
For sure.
Spiritual shit that's going on beneath the surface, right? So I want to link, make sure I'll put it in the show notes, because you announced in a video on Instagram the crowdfunding for the movie. Do you know what the website is, or if people want to contribute to the crowdfunding?
The campaign has ended, unfortunately. So
it has? That seemed quick.
Yeah, they had it on for 30 days, and
that's
I had
all.
No idea. Yeah.
So do you know if it's a go or not?
So I had, when there were like 8 days left, I had reached out to Scott. Was like, hey, what happens if the Indiegogo doesn't reach the goal? And he said, well, that's only like one level of the sourcing that we're doing. And, the producer is like going out there and trying to raise the funds as well. And I was like, okay, cool. So he's, I guess, pounding the pavement and trying to find some funds as well. But, if anybody like wants to contribute, I don't know if you can after the fact, but like, I think people would be open to it.
Yeah, well, let me know and keep me posted if there's anything I can update the show notes with, so that folks can,
I appreciate it.
Once they hear this, they can go back and look and try and contribute, because I think these are really beautiful ways. I know jack shit about the movie industry, but this kind of crowdfunding seems like a beautiful way, because it's more collaborative, communal, grassroots way to get pictures made. Yeah, especially more independent films. I think it's really amazing. So if we can have some small part in getting that up and running, I think that would be awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You had another amazing idea that you talked about on Instagram, which I fully support. You proposed that Ruby Sue should be a spokesperson for an RV company. And I so want to get an RV company or a van company or something to sponsor the podcast. We need to put our heads together.
Yeah,
and
there you go.
With an RV company, because we're like, I so want a camper van. I've already named it. Its name is Wesley, after the Princess Bride, because it's as you
I was just going to say, there you go.
So shout out to Carrie always. I so want the camper van, but we're getting to that age where, people want to be hitting the road. We want to return back, reclaim that freedom that we had, especially as Gen Xers now. Some of us are going to be getting to the point in a few years where we're retiring. So we're going to be traveling more. So I'm like, yeah, we need to hone in on the RV market.
I know. Sure. That's a dream of my husband's and mine is to have some sort of, it's funny because like over the years we've gone back and forth of like, do we want a fifth wheel? Do we want, like I don't even know what like the correct terms are, which does not bode well, honey, for my being a spokesperson. But I could learn real quick.
Yeah. So if you need to know, let me know.
Thank you. Yeah, you'll be my coach for all things. But yeah, it's like we have these desires to have some sort of recreational vehicle to go and see the, at least the United States, if not North America, wherever we can drive. And we love road trips and we love traveling and all that stuff. So that's definitely something that we want to do. And I can't remember when the idea hit me, but I was probably stoned. But
I can't believe it hasn't occurred to you before. Natural thing.
I think I've been holding on to this idea for like a couple years at least, but it didn't occur to me until recent years. And I was like, this would be fucking gangbusters. Like this is like such low-hanging fruit. Why has nobody thought of this? Like,
I guess we should probably, again, for people who've been in a coma since the 80s or something, or just fairly recently born, we should probably explain why we're talking about you potentially being an RV spokesperson.
Right. So, Ruby Sue and Cousin Eddie and the family all lived in an RV that then shows up to Clark Griswold's house and Chris's vacation, and we pile out of. And the RV is in fact, I've got a fucking RV ornament sitting on my tree right now with Cousin Eddie. I got that for Ed for Christmas last year.
Are you serious? That's
yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. I'm looking at it right now because my tree's still up. But yeah, so the RV does play a critical role in Christmas vacation, and is an iconic thing. And that there's an RV.
Yep.
And so like, hello, I
it's
lived
an
in
obvious
one.
fit. Yep. There are so many RV places here in Colorado. Like, as soon as I find something, I'm gonna be like, and I got the perfect spokesperson for you too. Because
perfect.
For my 50th birthday, I decided I wanted to go do a bunch of road trips, just the dog, Winnie and me. Mm-hmm. And I'd seen a lot of states. And so I wanted my 50th year to cap off me going to all 50 states myself. Oh, wow. Winnie's been to like 42, I think, states.
Wow.
And so I rented a little pull behind square drop trailer and towed it with my Subaru. We drove through Canada up to Alaska, and that was the 50th state. But
wow,
this little square drop didn't have a toilet. And so I bought this like briefcase style foldable toilet that you open it up and the legs pop out. And I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and she was like, we need to get you a bumper sticker that says "Shitters Full."
Yeah, there you go. Totally.
Subaru.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
So let me ask you, what are you envisioning or intending trying to bring into reality with this phase of your life where you want to get back into the entertainment industry? Where would you like to see that potentially go?
It's funny because I am definitely somebody who classically has had modest dreams, and I'm trying to cut that out. Now, what I will say is that my desire to get back into acting is not to be famous. If that happens, I'm not going to complain about it, or, I'm not going to try to not make that happen. But my whole objective is to work. I really just want to work. I want to get back in front of the camera. I want to be on set. I want to do the things that really rev my engine, that fulfill me, that give me that passion again. And that is the main objective, is to work. Of course, there's a financial aspect to that too. I want to be able to bring in money. I mean, a lot of acting gigs pay well. Some acting gigs don't pay very well. A lot of them don't pay very well. But, I want to find the balance right between working and being able to fulfill that passion, but also bring in money. And so my vision is that I work enough to be able to live comfortably, if not more than comfortably. What that looks like initially, again, I talked about, or I guess I hadn't, maybe I did, I can't remember, commercials, right? Because again, lucrative, they shoot quickly, the residuals that come in from them are probably the more lucrative part, I would say. And that's something that is digestible for me right now, because I'm really limited at the moment to what I would be able to do with Charlotte. It's sort of like a chicken and the egg thing, where I would need childcare in order for her to be covered while I do the acting, but I need to act to make the money to pay for the childcare. Right. So that's got to kind of be worked out. But, I mean, the way that it was like coming to me in my mind, where it was, when I was really kind of going through the process of figuring out whether or not this was feasible for me at this juncture, I was like, okay, commercials, TV spots, fucking Law and Order, whatever. There's so many shows that.
Yes, please come on SVU. That's my jam.
Right, it'll be like Dead Hooker #3,
#1 at least Dead Hooker.
Totally, yeah, exactly. I'm the one who they have to take photos of, because they're like, I actually was like alive at some point.
You'll
And,
be in the beginning, like in that very
right.
beginning. You'll be the person that gets offed from like the first couple of seconds of the
Totally.
show. Yeah.
But yeah, so plenty of shows like that. And then,
Hmm.
maybe it develops into more. Maybe it's like a guest spot that is recurring, or, maybe it becomes more than that. So like I am really doing my best to not limit myself. And what the hell is the term? Oh, God, my brain is just like so worthless sometimes.
Like box
But
yourself in, or
limiting beliefs. I'm
oh yeah,
really
yeah,
not trying to
yep.
have limiting beliefs
The coach
because
could not come up with that phrase either, so that's okay.
listen, it's almost past your bedtime too, I think. Um, I know you have a 9:45 curfew, but
That's I know you're going to hold me accountable to that.
I am. Yes, I'm your accountability buddy.
That's right.
Um, but
Well, I know you said that you don't that you're somebody who has kind of modest dreams, and I want to challenge you a little bit on that as your accountability buddy, even though you
okay,
haven't actually
please.
told
Yeah,
me
no,
exactly what you want to be
bring it,
accountable
bring
for.
it, bring it at me. All
I,
the
I'm
things.
I'm I'm curious, is there, and it doesn't have to be big. We're not talking like some massive role, but is there some kind of dream role that you feel that you have in you that you would love to be able to give life to?
I don't know. It's a really great question. I've not thought about it. I mean, honestly, like the first thing that comes to mind is playing somebody like myself. You
Mm,
know, I think that that's something that I'd probably be pretty good
mm.
at because, who knows me better than me?
I just had like a vision of you playing some badass mom that gets like pulled into some crime thing, and like the ordinary person who becomes the superhero of the
Oh, there you go.
yeah.
It could be that, or it could be like one of those, I don't want to say coming of age because that's not what I mean, but like a comedy, but that's, also got like a little like not dramedy, but like a heartfelt movie where,
Yeah.
it's like almost like in the vein of Little Miss Sunshine,
Yeah.
where it's like got serious notes but also comedic and it's just like
Hmm.
real and human. That's the type of thing that I just immediately am brought to.
I absolutely
Something
see
like
that
that.
for you. And I think that's a really great way to kind of start wrapping this up, because you said to me on our first call that you felt like you were at the stage of life where you were finally knowing who Ellen was. So can you say a little bit more about that? Because that's what came to mind when you were talking about that role. That's what it seems like, a woman who's finally, I don't want to say finally coming into her own, but who's reconnecting maybe with who she really is.
I don't fully remember saying that,
I
but
just couldn't work. Does that feel true for you in this moment? Ask the coach.
totally. No, it's not. I don't not feel that way. I just don't totally remember that part of our conversation.
That's
But
okay.
I can probably get back there or try to understand what it was that you're saying
Well,
that I was saying,
like, where do
which
you
is,
feel you are now with, like, who is Ellen right now at this phase of her life?
I'm somebody that's been around the block both in this life and in all other lives,
Not like a dead
which
hooker, though.
no, she's
Not in that sense.
that's
I'm
that
sorry.
we've been around her last block.
I take
She's
just took
on
a
the
really
corner,
beautiful point and just shit all
right?
over it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't. I had that was easy
Shut up,
though. I had to
Michelle.
take that one.
Shut the fuck up.
I had
Anyway,
to grab that one.
no, I
Anyway,
appreciate
I'm
it.
sorry.
Low hanging fruit.
Rewind.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I'm somebody that has lived many lives and many lives in this one life. And, it's through all of those collective experiences that have helped shape me into the person that I am right now. And, like I didn't get married until I was 42 years old. And I didn't like find the love of my life until I was 40, just shy of 40. Held out on marriage, even though there were multiple people that wanted me to go down that path with them, and I refused. And maybe in a nicer way. But, I held out because I knew that I wanted something not specific, but I was holding out for the right thing. And, I didn't get married until I found that right thing. And I was ready to be single for the rest of my life because I would rather be single and happy than to settle.
Yeah.
And that's, like one of my mantras in life is to not settle. And even though I have settled in a lot of ways, and that's sort of like coming back to this whole idea of not having limiting beliefs. And, so I told you that I read very recently You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, which has like become my fucking Bible. I just finished like another one of her books, which I'm also like not furiously, but like in the sense of just like very excitedly working on the lessons
I got
from.
to read those now. I got to make them be part of our book club so I can read them and be on the same
Oh,
page.
yes, I will send the links to you as well. But, like not limiting my beliefs because as Jen says, like dream big and you'll get the big dreams that you want. But like if you dream small, then you're gonna, if you dream modestly, then you're gonna have a modest life. And
Yep.
I think that I have been okay with the modest life because that has seemed within reach, like that has been achievable, right? With not a whole lot of effort, but I'm like ready to put in the effort and ready to fucking put the elbow grease in and to do all the shit to make it happen. Because why the fuck not? Like why not have the things that you want? And so the Ellen that I am now is somebody that has all of this life experience to work off of and wisdom and fucking gray hairs and the whole thing to say, okay, like I understand now. And it wasn't until I had reached that certain point where I had a handle on who I was that I felt like I was ready to get married, to have a kid, to, sort of take on life in a much more meaningful and like serious and substantial way. And that's what I'm doing. I'm fucking grabbing life by the balls. And this Ellen is very different than a lot of the Ellens past who were not as outspoken, not as that's not the right word, not as like staunch and like aggressively like this is like I know what I want and I'm gonna stand up for myself and just like not wanting to rock the boat. That's like how I was, past Ellen was like that, afraid of confrontation, not wanting to like call customer service and, fight with them about some erroneous bill or whatever, charge. Now it's like, give me that fucking phone. Motherfucker, hello. You're not going to help me. Let me speak to your fucking manager. Like it's, I have evolved. And so I think that that's probably what I meant, imagine. Again, I don't remember what the context was of our conversation last time when that would have come up, but the Ellen now, like I have a handle on who I am and I'm claiming that. I am
Mm-hmm.
claiming myself and I am claiming what I want and I'm gonna make my fucking life happen the way that I want to.
Mm. I think that's a mic drop right there. Great place to end. Yeah. But not before a couple of things. I want to make sure people know where to find you. And then I want to
Yeah.
subject you to a lightning round before I let you go. So tell me where people can find you if they want to stalk you like I did.
Right. Instagram
Mm-hmm.
at Ellen Latzen. That's pretty much my handle anywhere. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Threads, I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on TikTok for however long that's going to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not on Twitter
Mm-mm.
because fuck that place.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to book a cameo with me, I'm on there too. You just got to look up
Oh
Ellen
yeah.
Latson.
So that's in your
Yeah.
link to, if they want to book a
hmm
cameo. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the place that is probably the best for me is Instagram. That's
Okay.
you can I've got the most handle on that one, I think.
And I lied. Never believe a former lawyer when they're like, "Oh, I just have a couple more questions." There was one
That's
question I did
listen,
want to ask you
all good.
when you were talking about, coming into the version of Ellen that you are now, and
hmm
we were talking about, is there a role that maybe you would have as kind of a dream role? Do you think you
hmm
would ever write your own script?
You know, maybe it's hard because for me, like I am a writer, but I'm like a stream of conscience writer. I am not a screenwriter, which is not to say that I couldn't sort of tweak my talents and abilities to create a script. And again, I don't want to like limit and I don't want to say no to anything. So, I'd probably need a little bit of help. But yeah, I think so.
I think, I mean, somebody who could hold you accountable. Yeah, the reason I ask is as you were describing that, I just had this vision pop in my head. So take it or leave it of you writing your dream role for you to play on that kind of journey that you were talking about of a movie or something of a woman kind of coming into her own, that kind of
Yeah.
story. So
You
I
just gave
just
me
think
all the
that's it.
tingles, by the way. I just like felt it
Mhm.
all throughout.
That's what I'm here to do. Make you tingle, baby.
That's what she said.
Dear God. Okay. Lightning round. What is your fondest Gen X childhood memory?
You know, it's funny because like so you did send me these questions in advance, which I appreciate because I
Everybody
would have
always
been like,
forgets. So I'm like, I'm just not going to send them anymore.
no, I appreciate it. I put a lot of thought into it because you know it's funny, like because all of your questions are Gen X based, which of course is the fucking Gen X podcast, so it makes sense. But you know, for me, like it's hard because I have so many. And again, like this comes back to the whole point that I made before of having, you know, acted when I was a kid. So I was like very aware of all the things that was happening during the, you know, the 80s and 90s when I was growing up. But like if we're talking about sort of like an overall sign of the times sort of thing, you know, the first thing that came to mind was playing Manhunt as a kid during the summer.
I don't know what that is.
So Manhunt is a game, you know, I grew up in the suburbs and, you know, is basically like, and I don't even know if this game exists now because it's so different. This is like a game that
I'm
could only
having
really
really
exist
awful visions of
prior.
what this is.
No. It's a good game. So it's basically like a game of tag, except like within a you know a neighborhood. So
Okay.
or like hide and seek.
Mm.
So somebody's it, except the person that's it. And now it's like been you know 30 years since I fucking played this game. So maybe tweaking the rules, but the manhunt everybody's trying to find the person that's it. So that's why it's
Mm.
a manhunt.
Okay.
And so it's like if I close my eyes, I can still feel the hot, you know, like the warm summer nights running
Mm.
around after dark. No cell phones, you know, like having a curfew and just having the ability to like be out running around with your friends after dark and trusting that everything was going to be okay and not having the you know the worries of the world on your shoulders because there's so many terrible people out there that you have to like worry about now. You know, I don't
Right.
think kids can
Right.
really do that now. So that was it. You know, Manhunt was the thing that came to mind. So I'm sorry that that didn't really like land with you because you don't know what it
I
is.
love that. While you're playing manhunt in the suburbs, we were in Nebraska running around cemeteries at night, snipe hunting. Have
There
you
you
heard of
go.
snipe hunting?
No.
I'll have to take you.
Okay. Can't wait.
It's the cruelest joke. There are no such things as snipes. But you take people to the cemetery, you make
Hmm.
the victim hold a bag and tell them that the rest of you are going to go off like into the trees or whatever it is to scare the snipes out, and they need to stand there with the open bag and wait for the snipe to come fly in the bag, and then you leave them there.
That's fucked
So
up.
that's what we did. We don't have any trauma in our childhoods at all.
Jesus Christ. All right. Moving on.
Out of curiosity, this is not in the lightning round, but do you have a favorite acting memory from when you were a kid?
Um, I mean, there were so many great ones, you know. Being on the set of Christmas Vacation was just really awesome. You know, there were kids running around, and you know, the cast really was like a family mostly. You know, and shooting on location in LA was really fantastic. Being from New York, so being on location in LA for 3 months, you know, where there are palm trees and warmth and not going to school and being, it was just that was like a dream. But yeah, I mean, countless. They were mostly there. I remember one memory that was my least favorite,
What's it? Do
which
you care to
was
share?
I was on an episode of The Equalizer. Do you remember that show? Like the
Mm-hmm.
original Equalizer with Edward Woodward. And my so that the episode that we did was a takeoff of a real case in New York where there was this like top lawyer who was actually really abusive of his family. And I'm again because my fucking brain is a sieve these days, blanking on the name of the actor who played my father. but he was like a full-on method actor. I think I like blocked it out because it was so traumatizing. But did you see Avatar, the original Avatar?
I did not. No.
Okay, then this is gonna be then
Lost on
anyway, it
me.
doesn't matter. Yes, but so like full-on method actor. And there were multiple scenes in the episode where he was like beating me and the mother at the kitchen table, whatever. So filming with this guy was fucking traumatic because I had to like pretend to be beaten and he like dragged me down a hallway and just like all this shit. And
Oh,
that
wow.
was, yeah, not great. They had
How
to
old
like
were
teach me
you?
how to, I was 8.
Wow.
They had to,
Jeez.
they had to
Yeah.
teach me how to take a hit, right? So like a slap. And I was like so freaked out by it that I couldn't go with his hand. I kept like going this way. It
Going
was,
into it.
yes, so
Yeah.
it was this.
You
So
did
yeah,
not
that
turn
was,
the other cheek.
no, no.
Jeez. That would
Yeah.
be really traumatizing for a kid to
Hmm.
act out those kinds of scenes. I
Yeah.
can't even
Being
imagine.
beaten. Totally. So
Yeah.
anyway,
All right, moving on. What's your biggest piece of advice for other Gen Xers going through transitions or changes?
you know, uh, as somebody who was an expert on change at this point, I could write a fucking dissertation on it. Really, it just comes down to surrender. As my band Fish says, the trick was to surrender to the flow. And it's so true. What I have found is that when you obsess over something and when you like really try to control it and you really like want something so badly that you're putting all of this energy into it, and generally it's things that aren't meant for you, but you can't see it in the moment. The more you reach out for it, the more it moves away from you, the more you're pushing it away. And it's hard not to obsess. It's hard not to, and there's a line, right, between like manifesting and obsessing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can only manifest if you surrender. If you are clear in what you want, right? But then you release it and you leave it up to
Yes.
the universe. So don't obsess, just trust, right? And like it really does come down to trust. Like you have to have faith. And I'm not talking about faith in God because I don't believe in such things. But if that's your thing, then mazel tov. But faith in the universe, faith in whatever it is that you hold or don't. Maybe do atheists have faith in
Yeah,
things
they
working
have faith
out?
in nothing, and that isn't, and I'm not mocking that. Like it's a faith that there's nothing, and that is faith
Right.
itself.
But like when it comes to like faith working out, things were anyway, I digress again. But you gotta believe, you gotta have faith, you gotta just, kind of hold on. And, especially for Gen Xers, I think, because again, like coming back to this like cynical, pessimistic, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
apathy almost, right? It's easy to be discouraged and you just gotta fucking stick with it. So surrender to the flow.
Yep. Put a big cherry on top of that. Faith is, I think, one of my favorite words. It's powerful in that
Hmm.
because it's an unshakable commitment to something that
Yeah.
you don't even have evidence of.
Right. It's a total lack of control. And it's really easy for me to say because I'm a fucking control freak about a lot of things in
Totally.
my life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are, like they
Hmm.
want to have control, but like when you really think about it, control is just a fucking construct. We don't have control over it. Like I have control over this bottle because I'm holding it, but even that is tenuous,
Hmm.
like so like I could, yeah, we have control over nothing. And so, you just have to sort of accept and have faith and be positive too.
Yeah.
I
I
know that's
love the
hard.
fish quote. That's a good one.
Take
What's your favorite Gen X era word or phrase?
a chill pill.
Yeah, that's a good one.
My mom used to get so fucking pissed off at my sister and me when we would say that. Take a chill pill. She'd be like,
Well,
don't you
I
ever
can
fucking say
see
that to me
why.
again. God, she would get so mad. Take a
I
chill pill,
cannot
mom.
imagine ever having saying that to my mom. I
I'm
would have been
sure.
leaning into the slap.
Yeah,
Definitely.
totally. What's yours?
Yep.
What's your favorite?
Dude, like I say dude a lot and awesome. And I say like rad and gnarly and like. I don't
Hmm.
know that like is a word that I like, but we all say it. Like Like is the word that I feel like Gen Xers invented, and everybody says it now. So I don't know
Yeah.
that it's a
Well,
favorite, but it's iconic.
agreed. I think that's funny because so I have tried really hard in my adulthood to try not to say like as much as possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes it's called for in a sentence,
Hmm.
but a lot of times it's because it's just a placeholder, right?
Yeah.
Because like it's a pause, it's a beat. But I find that generations younger and younger, they say it 15 fucking times in a
They
sentence, and it's
do. They say
so
it a lot
irritating.
more.
So irritating.
You're
But it's
so
funny that you
right.
say that Gen X invented it because I think you're totally right. Because
That's
like
my
wasn't a
hypothesis.
thing. No, I think you're right because if you think about boomers, right? They weren't saying like.
Mm-mm.
That wasn't part of their vernacular. That wasn't the parlance of their times.
No, I feel like I have kind of a vague memory of when that sort of came about. Like I have memories of being in school of us starting to
Mm.
kind of say it, and my mom saying, "What is happening? What is with this word like? What is going on here?" So I feel like
So
we did invent
it's
it.
like early 80s?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
yeah.
Interesting.
Gen X era theme song for your life.
Pump up the jam, pump it up while
I
your
love that
feet
song.
are stomping. Yeah, pump up the jam. You know, that was another tough one when
Hmm.
that question was posed to me. Because I was like, oh fuck, there's so many goddamn
I
songs.
know.
Because then again, it's like, what do you consider a Gen X song? I
Yeah.
guess
Well,
a song that
like
would be probably from the 80s.
well, no, I consider, I mean, given that we were born between 65 and 80, I consider Gen
Mm-hmm.
X songs to not only fall in there but into the 80s and probably early 90s because
Yeah,
so it's a broad span. I have a
it
whole
is.
Gen X soul playlist on Spotify I can share with you. It's got like
Please
36
do.
hours of
Yeah,
songs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What's your theme song?
Oh, too many. I my Yeah, same. I'm such a music freak
Mm-hmm.
that and my music is very dependent on my mood,
Mm-hmm.
hence why the Gen X Soul playlist has 36 hours of songs on it.
I love it.
But I think overall,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't even know, I think this is a Gen X era theme song because it came out when I was in college, is White Zombies More Human Than Human.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
because it just makes me feel like a badass. But I have so many, just depending
totally.
on my mood. So, and last one, what do you most appreciate about being a Gen Xer?
You know, we're fucking cool. Like really cool. Like actually cool. Our parents' generation, you know, they had some cool moments to live through. You know, I'm sad that I wasn't alive in the 60s and not alive to like really appreciate them. You know, and honestly, I feel even though I am Gen X and I do within the confines of the generations that have been established, I do definitely feel like I'm Gen X, but I also feel that I am like a subsect. And I've heard people talk about this before. They call them exennials, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is a vomitous term.
I
And I
know.
can't believe that I even fucking said it. It like makes me ill.
You're so not cool.
No, that's fucking terrible. Whoever it's, I wanna like wedgie whoever fucking came up with that shit because, or wet willy. I want to give that person a wet willy
Well,
because it's
well,
fucking terrible. So bad. Um, but regardless of the term, I do feel that I am part of that generation,
mm-hmm.
which is like in my mind, like 77, 78 to like 82, 83,
Yeah, yeah.
where, you know, we definitely grew up in a time with payphones and Rand McNally maps and, you know, like having to live analog, but also as part of our adolescence, but like maybe not so much adolescence. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you define adolescence, but like teenage dumb, that's like when technology started to
Mm-hmm. Yep.
become more mainstream. And so I think that I'm kind of like in that niche.
Yeah,
And people that are
yeah.
like, no, you know, a generation has to be 15 years. It's like, well, who the fuck said that?
It's all
Who
just
made
made
that
up at
rule?
the end of the day, right? Like, I think there's, and I've said
Whatever.
this time again on the podcast, like at the end of the day, it's just a label, and I really eschew there's a lawyer word for you, labels as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's utility to kind of looking at the decades that formed that where we grew up in our formative childhood years.
For sure.
So there's some, and so people like you who are kind of younger Gen Xers, older millennials, whatever it is. I mean, you are the very, very last group of people to remember that transition from no technology to everything is technology.
Yeah, totally.
I vividly remember being in law school or maybe it was college. I might have used a computer in college, but definitely law school is when I got on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like, and we're the last remaining relics that have that memory.
Yeah, totally.
Well, and boomers too, like our parents and grandparents do have that too, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, in terms of being Gen X, like, answers are fucking cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
Millennials, not so cool.
Yeah.
Gen Y or Gen Z or whatever the fuck, no way. Not cool at all. Boomers,
What
not
is your
cool.
daughter? What is she? What generation is she going to be?
Oh, no idea.
Have they even invented an alphabet for that yet?
Beta, I think it's just totally. I've heard something about Generation Beta. I don't fucking know. I think it's
Ew.
whoever's making the rules now is fucking, because it's all.
That's so dumb.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're right. Gen X is so cool. And one of my heartbreaks over the current state of our country is how I feel like our generation in particular, we used to be, at least I was raised like this, maybe other parts of the country were different, but we were very inclusive. You invited, at least my mom made me invite all the kids to your birthday party. You didn't get to exclude the booger eater. He was coming too.
Yeah.
And my intention and wish, despite, we have our political beliefs, and I'm fine with other people that have their political beliefs. I would like for our generation to be able to be the beacon of returning some civility, like getting back to our roots, getting back to how we were raised, to be civil. And yeah, we gave each other shit and we made fun of kids growing up and all of that. And at the end of the day, we all still did come together. And
yeah.
we've gotten away from that as a generation and as a country. And so this is,
again, that happens at home.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely,
if we want that, then it's up to the parents to instill that in the kids, because that's not just something that's organically going to happen. It's definitely not something that they're going to learn out amongst their schoolmates and out in the world, so. And I agree. I mean, one of the things that freaks me out the most about Charlotte, not the most, but like one of the things that freaks me out about Charlotte getting older is having to grapple with like her wanting technology and, wanting a tablet or a cell phone or both or whatever the fuck the thing's going to be by the time she's old enough, because you know how technology is. I mean, we're talking about another like 10 years. That's light years in technological terms. So whatever that thing is. And maybe the pendulum will swing back the other way. Maybe it will start to go back toward our roots, like you're talking about, and then we'll want to be a little bit more analog of a lifestyle. But yeah, I don't know how the fuck I'm gonna navigate all that, and I'm just gonna do my best to try to say, hey, look, this is how I was raised, and this is so cliche, but like this is how I was raised, and I fucking turned out great. So you can kiss your fucking cell phone wishes goodbye.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Right, exactly. When you're 15.
Ellen, I'm so grateful that I stalked you on Instagram.
Me too. Thank you so much.
No, I really, really am grateful to you and our connection, and I can't wait for our
shittin' books
club.
We have to make like t-shirts or something.
Oh my God, I would love it.
Or maybe hats. Something.
Mm-hmm. I'm not a hat person. I have a
no, that's okay. Whatever.
Yeah.
T-shirts then. Tank tops. I wear a tank top. Sweatshirts.
Yes, I like that. They gotta have a kangaroo pocket in the front. I like a kangaroo pocket.
Okay. So you'd like a pullover. I like a zip up. So I have to say in the back.
I could do a zip up if it's got pockets. I need pockets.
Yeah, of course. Women need pockets.
Yes.
It's just how it is. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, no, for sure. This has been wonderful. And thank you for having me.
This was so much fun. I love it.
Okay.
What did I tell you? That conversation was just extra everything. Ellen and I actually talked for an extra probably 20 minutes afterwards because we could just keep talking and talking and talking. Don't you love it when you meet people like that who you just feel like they're a long lost soul buddy and you can just talk and talk and then pick up later right from where you left off? Like, I'm so grateful to Ellen for her connection and for everything that she shared on the podcast. And I hope that it planted some nuggets for you to digest, that you are inspired and fired up, that you laughed your ass off. So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please like, share, and review this episode wherever you're listening. It means so much to me because it bumps it up in the algorithms. And if you have any questions or comments that you want to share, you can reach me at podcast@lifefromthesummit.com. Make sure to check out all the show notes so you can find out more about Ellen and the work that she's doing. And until next time, stay gold, Gen Xers.